Well, you've introduced yourself. Peter's introduced himself. Andy and Sean have not introduced themselves. Is that on?
Now it is.
And now you're gonna give yourself a slight introduction. Sean, you don't need it, but give us an introduction.
Very slight.
And then, you guys had talked about where you're gonna start? I leave it to you.
Andy Graff, I sail a J88 called Exile and have done a fair amount of dinghy sailing here in the Vanguard fleet as well.
Sean O'Neill, sail on Sydney 38 Eagle. I've done back in the day a lot of college and dinghy racing, laser stuff, big starting lines, small starting lines. So those days a few years ago now.
Cool. So I've got kind of a quick list, and I think we all kind of put together almost the exact same list of general outline questions and whatnot, but feel free to hop in. This is to answer the questions that you all have. These guys are all very good starters. And yeah, we'll go from there. So we're going to start with the pre-start, what we're doing when we get out to the race course to get ready for the race, especially as it pertains to starting. Let's start with Sean, because you're always generally the first boat out there practicing and getting warmed up. Just what are you looking for as far as start line? What information are you gathering in that hour and a half that you're out there, especially as it pertains to the start, as you're starting your initial game plan?
Yeah, first thing is I personally just like to do a mini upwind, downwind leg and get the crew in the groove, get a feel for the course, get a feel for the wind, seeing the oscillations. A lot of people, come out there right before their start gun and expect everything to go well. It rarely works that way. So you must start, far ahead of time. I also like to. I don't have, we have B&G, so I do like to ping the pin of the boat just so I have a good sense of the instrumentation on the boat, giving us how far away we are from the line. I don't over obsess about that, even though we have it. It's nice to have that info, but it's it's just one of the tools. So, and then also when you're doing your upwind and you're taking a look at what's going on. I like to set up the sails for the conditions, but if it's light air, let's say, after you set your sails up for upwind before the start, I purposely loosen things up a little bit because a lot of times, you're going to have to deal with acceleration. It's tough to accelerate the boats in light air. So I like to go to the start with the sails being somewhat of a, ease to Cunningham, car forward, out haul a little bit more ease, that type of thing. So that way you can accelerate out and then gradually tighten things up as the start happens.
Cool. You're go to you next, Andy. So in that kind of warm up period, say even before they've got the line set, what information are you gathering as far as what you're thinking for sides and where you want to start? Kind of the idea of looking for that first shift or hitting the first shift. What's your process looking like? Half an hour before the start line, to start informing that decision.
Yeah. So with regards to the start, I think that having a decision about what side of the course you might want to go to, and that's a whole other topic, I guess, of analysis. But if the tactician on the boat, comes to the conclusion we want to go right or left, middle. And then within that, it might be like, we want to stay right, but we don't need necessarily to go right hard right away. You just can't go left, or we want to eventually. But in other times, it might be like, look, we just have to get right immediately. So I think whatever the tactician comes to that opinion, then affects where you might want to start in terms of like facilitating that strategy. So before the start line is even set, I think you can kind of make that decision. It might be affected by current wind shifts, expected wind shifts, where there's more pressure. And then also, I think before the starting line is even set, I think it's a good thing to do practice approaches, practice accelerations. Maybe hopefully there's some mark or some line. If you have a Vacros, you could even use the Vacros to see your distance from the line. But even if that's not set, I think practicing in a realistic way of slowing down, pretending like you're in a group of boats, and then talking to the crew like, okay, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, okay, keep the boat moving, and then like practice those accelerations, practice turning the bow down, practice getting the sails set for max acceleration. You can do this by yourself or with a sparring partner. But that's like something that you should be doing a lot of, especially with a newer boat or a newer crew, to get your boat handling skills up.
I like one of the things he said there, talk about, okay, we really need to get right, or the right side's favored. I think that plays a lot into when you're picking where you want to go in your plan. For example, we get like the thermal breeze here where it's going to shift left and increase, you want to get out, right? And we're, a situation like that where we know we need to get left on stay on starboard for a while. We're going to come up with a plan that allows us to get to the line, probably favor the left end of the line, but be able to go straight. But let's say it's a little bit more, uncertain. You get in those conditions where we think right's favored, but we're not really sure. That can change your algebra on where you want to start. We're going to hedge more to the middle. We're less concerned about the exact location and more concerned about, getting a clean start with options.
I think also if you have a full package of instruments like B&G or many others that have this, you can have the wind graph going during the pre-start, and you can figure out what the oscillations are, right? So if it's an oscillating wind, not a persistent shift, right? Then knowing, when those oscillations are going to happen is really good at the start, because you can be like, oh, well, 5 minutes before the start, when I look at the line, it's favored, pin by 5, but it's a 5-minute oscillation, and it's really going to be boat by 5 when it comes down to the start. And that's another good piece of information to have, right then. I've done really well in a lot of starts, because at some point in time, I'm like, wait, it's shifting, and we're throwing our plan out the window at 3 minutes, and we're going to the other side of the line. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, so even when we have the instrument package, but especially when we don't, in the last 5 minutes, I'm constantly doing line checks and wind checks, because that will, if your instruments don't tell you, that will tell you what phase the breeze is in as you get down the watch, the time, and give you a very good indication if you thought you were going to go left, but maybe it's time to get right in the early part of the feed. So lots of wind checks.
So you guys everyone understand what Seth's saying? So he's checking the wind. We're checking the wind not only 30 minutes before the start, but through the entire start sequence. Because there's, especially around here, we'll get crazy, new wind lines coming through at 3 minutes to the start. You can throw your whole plan out the window because all of a sudden there's a 20-degree lefty and you need to get to the other side. Cool. Thanks, Seth. Yeah, Sean's
I also want, Peter, you mentioned in your talk, and it's true, ley lines. One thing we should talk about is ley lines, because it does matter a lot. And there's a lot of different things you could use on the course to help you figure out what the ley line is to the start line, whether it's the boat or the pin. First of all, when I say ley line to the start, everybody understand what that is. So obviously it's the part here where, absent any other boats, you're going to wind up being able just to brush the committee boat, or over here, we're able to completely get up and just make it around here without having to shoot the pin. When you're heading away, what I like to do is I like to look around, and here's the other thing: you can't, given the starting sequence, sometimes you don't have a lot of time to do that. So one of the things, if you're like the third sequence in a group of 5 sequences, and you're not able to get in there to do what you want, the other thing you do is an alternate to kind of help you with those ley lines of trying to figure out where that is. Look at the boats that started ahead of you and look at their angles, and then kind of use that as a guideline to help you see where that is. But when you're in Chicago, where we have buildings on at least the shore, if the wind's out of the west and you're facing that way, use them. But when you turn around and head away for it, where do you go? Well, if you're up here and here's your red boat, and that's the Hancock building over there, when you go back around, when you point away, look straight back and then use that as a reference point. So use as many reference points as you can because what you don't want to do, especially in a larger fleet, is get up in here and then find yourself trapped outside of all the other boats. So that's just, use the reference points, use the boats that are ahead of you. Ideally, if you can get in there and do it yourself, do it. But look at what's in front of you, but also get 180 degrees from that angle and then look what's behind you. And then that's another reference point. Any questions on that?
And I think the overarching kind of thing with that is you stay within the ley lines, your starboard tack ley line for the pin and the boat, you're in a pretty safe spot. Now, all you need to do is get a clear start. You can't get taken out of the boat. You can make the pin. You have a lot more options. When we match race, we kind of refer to this area down here where you're safe and within the ley lines is the playground because if you're there, you're not pinned out. You can't get taken out. So a little bit, like fleet race, we don't necessarily have someone trying to take us off the course, but we at least know that, you're not going to get hooked up on someone or come in and get caught barging and then have to go see Peter in the room. All right. Favorite method for determining favorite end?
Instruments, but if not, just luff in the middle of the line, right? If you've got a Vaqueros or if you've got anything else, it'll tell you what the line bias is, and I go by that. I go by that a lot. However, B&G is great because it always has the true wind, which is changing, and so having something that gives you that is great. But if not, I just pretend like I'm in a dinghy and luff my boat in the middle of the line, look on both ends, and you can figure it out. You can also, at times, look at the flags on the committee boat if they're coming back. However, those do oscillate a lot, and the committee boat swings a lot. So just because the flags are going this way on the boat, if the boat's not aligned to the wind at the time, those don't help you. So they can be a reference, but they're not always. Anybody else have anything else?
I like to be somewhat in the middle of the line and do a manual check where we'll go head to wind and then I'll sight down my traveler, just because it's visible to me. I know it's like exactly perpendicular to the boat. So with a boat like head to wind, I can see that the traveler now is pointing such that the pin is windward of that traveler line and the boat is leeward. So that tells me the pin's favored or vice versa. So I like to do that. I also like to use the instruments. You need a ping, of course, to do that with the instruments, or you need a Vaqueros for the pings done for you. But one thing I'll say with that is that you don't want to be reaching around in traffic with other boats around you and say oh, look, the boat's favored by 6 boat lengths. Well, that input is completely dependent on the true wind that you're measuring on your boat. So if you're sailing around in traffic in bad air and you're doing a lot of turns, that might not be reliable. So to get a reliable measurement, make sure that you're clear of other boats and that you're not turning quickly. So ideally, you'd even be shooting head to wind and looking at it.
Everything they said, and the only thing I'll add to that is if you see another boat and you're in close proximity to them and they're shooting the line and it's not a perfect spot for you to do it, it's okay to steal their wind check and look, because if they're doing it proper and it's slow enough, and you can see where their sails are luff on the boom, and you can see which side of the line they're pointing at. So use other boats also.
And just at the start beforehand, right?
They're going to teach you in the starts before yours. So if it's a multi-start fleet, just watch what's going on ahead of you.
And these guys all have, good instrument packages. Sound like they're all reasonably, okay, 2 of the 3. And they sound like they're reasonably confident in their calibration. I hop from boat to boat a lot. I will get on boats, and one of the things I always look at is a tack back and forth, and I'll see how much the true wind number jumps. So I'm always a little weary of hopping on a boat, or maybe we don't have them, or we're, I think not all the T10s have wind instruments. Of using the wind instruments unless you're very confident in them. I think the dinghy method that Andy talked about with pointing the boat up into the wind. And you can also do your own wind shot and then do the math, sail, get your angle going down the line and then add or subtract 90 degrees depending on whether you're starboard or port, and doing essentially the math that your instruments would be doing as well. But the comment on the pointing head to wind, you're less concerned about calibration when the boat's not really moving. So, Cool. All right. So now we've got our general plan on the wind. We've got our, we know which end of the line's favored. What are you guys talking about in, that couple minutes before the sequence starts or even right as the sequence starts as far as your planning? What kind of things are you looking at? How detailed is your plan coming in to the start line? Do you have it exactly, I want to be here at this time doing this, or is it a little bit looser?
So regardless of whether I'm a tactician or whether I'm on another job in the boat and there is a separate tactician, I think like the helmsman and tactician at a bare minimum need to be communicating about what the plan is. And that plan might change, but the helmsman needs to know kind of what the goal is. So like most of the time, I think this can happen, before 5 minutes even, but it may change and may need to be audible. We like to break it down for thirds of the line, so boat third, middle third, or pin third. And that plan might be based on which side of the line is favored, but also might be based on where the tactician wants to go sidewise up the course. And then within that left, middle, or both side thirds, I would also, if I was a helmsman, I would want to know, like, of course, ideally, we would want a clear lane where we're able to sail straight and not forced to bail out. But would you rather, is it extremely important that we're able to stay on starboard tack and go for a long time? Or is it less important? And of course, you always want to be able to do that, but like if you know that you want to go hard right anyway, you could be a little more aggressive perhaps on the boat side, knowing that like if you nail the start, great, but if something bad happens, you can tack out. Whereas if the tactician really wants to go left or like say on starboard tack, you need to prioritize making sure you have that lane so that you're not forced to tack early.
Yeah, and I also like the idea too of, as you're thinking of, let's say we're in this segment of the start, maybe 3 to 5 minutes before the start. I'd add to that, don't get too far away from the starting line.
That's right.
Rarely does it ever help you to be farther away. It takes options away. Options are good. I mean, you definitely want to have your mindset as far as a general game plan as to where you want to start on the line. But if you're too far away from the line, you can't adjust that plan easily at all. And so, especially in shipyard conditions, it puts a premium on staying close to the line as reasonable so that you can do plan B if you need to.
To tack onto both of these guys, don't get away from the line. Never jibe inside a minute. I can't tell you how many times I see people jibing, and I'm like, well, that's a second row start for you. You're not getting back there. And then with line bias and whatnot, if tactician wants to go hard right, if it's persistent shift right all day, I don't care if there's a 5-10 degree line bias to the pin. I can't utilize that because I got to go right. And in my fleet, the last 5 boats that are closest to the pin will always go almost to ley line and completely kill your entire plan. If you try to take that 5 boat lengths of bias, you might be 5 lengths ahead at the start, but you're on the wrong side of a shift that you're completely screwed on, and those boats won't tack. They just won't do it. It's just not in their blood. If they own that pin, they're gonna live it no matter what. So your tactical plan for right after the start means more to me in a lot of situations than the line bias does. Now, if they line up that you really want to go left and the pin is favored, great, own the pin. But a lot of times it's different, and I would do my tactical plan for the first beat before I would get a small line bias.
One other strategy besides left, middle, and right third could be if the tactician or you guys don't really think there's much of an advantage, just say low density start. So like wherever you can find a low density area on the line, and that starts at like 3 minutes, then at 2 minutes, and you're reevaluating, trying to set yourself up so that in the last 30-40 seconds, you're at the spot of the line that has the fewest boats. And that's not always the right thing to do, but like if there's no opinion really on the line, that can be another strategy that's good.
What are you doing at? What are you doing at like
2-3 minutes to kind of, when you're looking for a low density start to get away from boats? Like what are some strategies to, because inevitably when we're gonna go low density start, like crap, we're in the middle of the pack and, at a minute, it's too late to bail out of there, right? So what are you thinking 2, 3, 4 minutes before the start, to get away from the pack and find those clear areas and figure out where people are going?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's definitely tough. I think you're trying to not be in a spot, so there's like a cycle, right, where people are reaching back and forth and they're turning, and it's just a loop. So you're finding your spot in that loop, and it's important at like 3 minutes and at 2 minutes to kind of like work backwards from where you want to be. So if you want to be at the boat, like thinking about how you're in the right spot of that loop such that you'll be, stay at the luff lay line at 40 seconds, depending on your boat, speed and size. So thinking about that, and if you realize you're off track, like people usually do like a fairly long loop, but if you realize that you're not in the right part of the loop, just do a quick turn. Sometimes it's like a 360 or like a little spot, and that can distance you from a pack. So like the low density thing, the same way. If you realize that you're in a high density area, find some spot to get clear and maneuver, and then, get yourself lower density. Because I think lower density at, 2 minutes is often the right thing if your goal is to be low density at 30 seconds.
I think it's like 2-3 minutes. People tend to be in the area of where they want to start, right? If I'm thinking a pin start at like 2 minutes or so, I'm going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of the pin so I can do my time and come back. So if I see everybody stacked, heading out this way at 2.5 minutes, and I'm starting.
They're starting the pit.
You're starting. So I might bail out and say, "Cool, the boat's going to be open. I'm going to go out." Or more common is you come in and you see this massive gaggle of boats heading up and getting ready to barge and go see Peter later. And a lot of times what I'll do when I see that is I'll do that quick spin that Andy's talking about, get onto the tail end of this pack. Now I can just wait for all of these guys to set up for their, they'll come back
And lead them back.
and then if you lead them back, there's generally a nice gap open. So kind of leading that pack away from wherever you think they're all going to start.
Yeah, and repeatable things, right? So if I want the pin, I'm gonna come out here at like 30 seconds or 3 minutes, right? And maybe jibe or tack it at 240, 235 to get back here at 2 minutes, right? So if I want the pin, I'm going on port at 2 minutes. So that I've got 2 minutes, less than a minute out, tack, come back to it, right? But if I want the boat, I'm going to do this same maneuvering. I'm just going to do it earlier, right? So I'm coming back here at 2.5, 2:45, 3 minutes, so that I know I can get the minute long about line, which is what it normally is, and then do the same thing. So just repeat everything you do all the time. It kills me that people like do this Vanderbilt start, which I think we stopped doing in the 80s. But you go out to like the moon at 3-4 minutes, and you're like, okay, at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, I'm gonna tack and I'm gonna nail the start at the boat. And first of all, you're gonna barge and see me in the room. But second of all, it's just you want to be really close so that you can't be surprised by a wind shift, by the wind dying, and all of a sudden you're just caught out. So repeatable steps like knowing the timing at the pin, going away from it, and being like, oh, I'm a little late, right? So if you want the boat and you're actually there at 2:30, well, don't go up, basically jive around pretty soon to go back, but make this repeatable motion. I think at the pin, I always like to come in on port, to wherever it is I'm going to set up the tack and go. So.
No, that's great. And the timing is so big, I don't know if everyone knows what the Vanderbilt start is, but it was this idea. It's how we started when we were sailing the T10s in the 90s. You sail away the reciprocal of your upwind course. Say you cross the line at 3 minutes, you sail out for slightly less than half, so minute 10. Tack and come back with the idea you come in fast. And that worked better when the boats were heavier and let's say the starts are a little less aggressive. Now I think the timing has changed more so that we're coming into the line with the idea that we're going to engage and be ready for combat, right? Coming in, especially if you're sailing in a 36.7 apparently. T10s as well. So, do you guys want to talk a bit about like working back on that plan? I think that was kind of a good intro into the idea of, all right, obviously I want to be on the line with speed at 0 and then kind of work backwards from there. You two want to kind of,
Sure.
I think Sean's pretty good at this. He's,
One of the things that we need to think about is when we're heading away from the line, let's say we're in that, the final away, going away from the line before we do the final turn. It's really important that you don't get trapped. A lot of boats make the mistake. They're going away from the line and their timing, let's say, is pretty good, but there's a boat, let's say, just just right in front of them. Maybe you catch up to somebody and your port bow overlaps with their starboard transit. Now all of a sudden you're stuck. You're like, look at your watch, you look at the boat slowing up, you're like, okay, I want to turn around now, and you're like, oh, I can't. Now what? So now all of a sudden you put yourself in a situation where you're going to be late. So it's imperative that you have good communication between your trimmers and, driver, tactician. So that way you're constantly evaluating, keeping your swing, your bow swing, so it's got a clear path to come around when you want to come back around. Don't let the other boats dictate that to you. So.
and
Don't think that you can do that by letting the sails out, right? You're on a broad beach. Letting the sails out's not going to slow you down. S turns, right? Just slam the helm up, slam the helm back down, and you've given yourself a half a length, to stay away from them. So just keep turning the boat to slow it down. Very rarely does luffing in a beam reach slow you down that much.
Hey, Andy, can you put those boats back, like, overlap? Yeah, so just to make this like really clear, if I'm on the green boat right now, like this pack of 3 boats, like let's say this is at, I don't know, minute 30 or something, they're setting up to go to the right of the committee boat, and then they're all going to be looking to find that right lane to come back at the committee boat on, like, say, luffing lay in a good position. But if I'm in that green boat going left on port tack, back where you started, I would want to slow down. So like those boats are overlapped. Like if I'm the tactician, I'm like being really clear with the helmsman right now. Like you cannot sail overlapped with that boat. Like be clear astern so we have options. I'd much rather be clear astern of that pack on port tack because I can see in advance they're going to really telegraph. It's going to be really obvious when they're all getting ready to tack. So I'm going to have if I'm clear astern, I'm going to have the option of seeing them and watching them and picking my lane to tack. And usually that's going to be like, I want to pick a lane so that I'm not too close to them,
And the only other thing I agree with that 100%, I'd add to that too, is when you're that green boat and you get behind them, if the stars align and there's no other traffic to really worry about, you could actually control when you decide to go back too. So in other words, that purple boat, that red boat, they just can't slam a tack if you're sitting there and your nose, your bow up in there. They can head you up, but you could keep them from turning back to the line until you want to turn back to the line.
Yeah, and so rules wise, right, when these boats want to go up and they can, and they're ahead or they're lured and they can go up and then go ahead and win, but they can't tack. You can hold them if they're early and you got plenty of room and you want to keep, all this room open below you, you can, as the weather boat, just stay away from them. However, not allowing them to tack, and then you get tack when you want to tack, right? So it's a good position. As much as it's a bad position to be here, it's a good position to be here above them, controlling what they do. You can duck them if they're way early, or you can, delay their tack and then go when you want, or you just tack underneath them, as they go, you can just go too, and now you're controlling as a lured boat. So from a rule standpoint, being, close to them, but above their line or on their line, but able to go both directions, perfect place to be.
And a lot of times if I'm chasing, right, or if I'm the boat behind coming into a situation like that, especially it's really common, everyone's coming in here and wants to tack the boat. Sometimes my call is just going to be, I'm going to tack when this boat tacks, right? And I want to be tight to them and we'll get into, making and defending your holes later. I just want to tack when that boat in front of me tacks, and match them going back, because I know that's going to give me the best length going back, because otherwise unless you have them pinned out, which fleet racing, I don't think we do as much, just, I get too tangled onto the boat. But if you start, these guys start coming back and you start ducking boats and kind of getting out of your lane essentially, well, now all of a sudden it's, 50 seconds, 45 seconds, and I got to do attack and acceleration, and I'm behind everybody. So you generally want to kind of go with the pack and stay with them, unless they got massive ability or something like that. So, let's talk a bit about that. All right, that final. So I think in my opinion, one of the most critical parts of the start is that last turn back. Generally, attack onto starboard, sometime 1 to 2 minutes. What are you looking at timing wise, positioning wise when you're making that maneuver? And how are you making that call?
So you need to know your boat and the conditions and your fleet. So if you're in a relatively small fleet, there's going to be more room and there's going to be fewer boats like really stacked, but also how long is the line. So I guess really be aware of like, is it feasible to come in at 20 seconds, or are boats already going to be so stacked at 20 seconds that that's like not really a good plan? So that really depends on your fleet and your boat. How long does your boat take to accelerate? If you're in a J70 fleet, it's going to be really tight on the line. There's going to be a lot of boats. So like coming in at, 30 seconds with speed probably isn't going to be a super great plan. But at the same point, like if you're in a 36-7, even if it's a tight line, being luffed on the line all stacked up at 20 seconds is also not a good plan because the boat takes too long to accelerate. So what is the like final call of where you want to be time wise, where it's like now it's go time to get the boat up to speed. So I'm thinking about that, and I want to make that final turn before that cutoff time. So it's going to take me 30 seconds to accelerate, especially with light air. I do not want to be making any turn inside of that point. So I need to line myself up ahead of time and like thinking backwards so that I'm in the right spot. And if it turns out we make a mistake, I'd rather make the turn early enough, even if it puts me in slightly the wrong spot of the line than what we planned, than sticking with the plan and like being late to turn and late to accelerate.
But you want to talk about like I know we talk about it's more of a match race thing, but like the 2-to-1 ratios and kind of leaving time essentially for combat for.
Yeah, so the speed builds and everything, match racing is 2-to-1. I think this is a little less, right? But you don't want, like that Vanderbilt start we talked about, you don't want to just plan for that, right? Because there's going to be a crowd of boats, there's going to be things you have to do, you're going to have to come away from somebody, you're going to have to, do this or that. So you don't want to time it so that when you're returning, you don't have any time to do anything else, right? You're always going to have to do something. So leave 20 seconds or whatever in the bank for whatever sort of, things come up that inevitably going to happen. So you will be late, you will be second row if you just leave enough time to get back there. You're going to be buried by a boat, whatever happens.
Yeah. And this is, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
I'm piggybacking, and so when you're coming back, and you definitely want to have time to do a few things. So what's something that's probably going to happen if I run into it with perf or handicap fleet because I'm not always the fastest boat on the line when there's a par 40 around or what other boats that are there, and so you have to defend your position. So once you make your turn and you're under final approach, what could mess that up? Well, if somebody gets a hook on you, right, that would screw up your path back to the start line. So it's good to have those, like Peter said, those extra seconds in the bank because you're probably going to have to spend them. If no one's around, fine, you could luff your sail, do a little less turn. But inevitably, to start, it's competitive. There's going to be some other boats around. And you're going to have, they're going to come at you typically one of two ways. They're going to come at you from behind, like if you've tacked around in front of them and you're, by definition, slower out of attack than they are, and you waited too long to do it, they're going to come up on your stern and hook you and then pin you up where you don't want to be. So think about that. So you might actually have to head, tack sooner, head down a little bit, defend that to prevent that overlap. And where's the other area they're gonna come at you
Well,
from?
okay,
The other
just on
side.
that though, always defend the hook. When they come down to hook you, just keep going with them. You have to, right? If they get a hook on you outside of 30 seconds, is very bad for you. Inside of 30 seconds, it's probably bad for them, right? Because they're not gonna get enough of a piece of you. They're gonna sort of die out down there, so, but if it's outside of 30 seconds,
They're gonna be able to make that convert into something bad for you. But never try to go for a hook inside 30 seconds because it's just not gonna pay.
I just say like adjust that a little bit for the size of your boat, right? Like, I mean, if you're sailing Vipers or dinghies, you could cut that in half probably, but yeah.
Yeah,
same
the
principle.
Vanguards, we can do 3 tacks in 30 seconds. Great, a whole, but the 36 sevens, I don't think you'd even.
About a tack in 30 seconds.
So huge depend on the boat. Yes, sir.
So Peter, what you're saying is if you're the green boat and
Yeah,
you see a boat, the red boat's catching you from below,
you gotta turn down.
you gotta.
You gotta turn down and defend that.
it
Get
in-
going
yeah.
again, right? And force them, okay, that's not worth it, he's defending, go up, and now once they're up and hooked, now you can luff them,
That's
right? And extend, by turning down, you're closing the gauge on the lane, and I think we're gonna talk lane in a second, right? But, that's okay, because as soon as you convince them, oh, no, that's a bad idea, then once they go up and they're locked, then you can luff them,
Yeah.
right? And you can increase that lane back again, right? So
when
it
you
doesn't necessarily hurt you on your lane to defend the hook.
So you see them engaging you, you need to fall
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether
Down
you
below,
tacked
down
underneath
below
them or they're just trucking in, I generally, complete my tack onto a broad reach to do it, right? So they're coming in and I come in right like this. I'm not just gonna go here, because I'm worried about them. So I'm gonna, make sure that I'm able, before they are, to get going and get beam reaching and away from them.
And let's talk a little bit, the technique when you're doing this, especially in a bigger boat where we're struggling to accelerate, right? It's either we've tacked in here or we're going slow because we're killing time as boat goes to go beneath us. So it's gonna be a big head sail, jib or Genoa in. A, to accelerate, but B, that's gonna help pull your bow down. And you're gonna turn down aggressively, like down to a broad reach, like Peter's saying. And you're gonna wait, and either, what generally happens is you're either going to get near the boat that's to leeward of you, start getting near them, and this guy's gonna have nowhere to go, right? This guy's usually down here. And what the funny thing is, if you're in like a big fleet race, you'll see now this guy will go down, and now he's trying to
They'll just be stuck.
but once he's gone and he's the next guy's problem, you're done, right? You've done what you need to do. And this is the part I think most people miss is now you need to you've got A, probably more speed than you want, and B, you're starting to burn down into your hole, your acceleration gap. Turn the boat up hard, and especially in a smaller, lighter boat, it's a little bit easier, but even 36, 70, you can take that boat and use that momentum and turn it up, and we'll go fully head to wind. And especially if we're getting a little tight on the line, we use the helm to slow the boat down. So we'll sharp, aggressive turn up near or all the way up to head to wind. And now you're, because most of the boats are kind of sliding down the line as they're luffing. Now you're creating that gap to lure it to accelerate into.
Just don't go so far that the next boat gets a hook on you, right? So don't try to steal everybody else's lane. Just take your lane and try to gap off a little bit. As soon as you make too big a lane, somebody's gonna swoop into it.
That's a tasty looking lane. To be a shame if someone took it.
If you're trying to slow down, like Andy's saying too, if your boat's under 30 feet and it's not too windy, you could probably back a main too. It doesn't take much. It's just like 2 seconds pushing that boom down because you don't want to get your bow too close to the line. You want to like head back up to preserve that hull. So it's like 90% of the time or more, your goal is basically to preserve a lane to leeward, to accelerate into it then.
Yeah,
And to slow down, even on a 36.7, we call it cut the sails, right? Like when you're going, I just told you that when you're broad reaching or reaching, to ease the sails really isn't going to slow you that much. But when you're close haul or near close haul, and you ease the sails all the way out, you're going to slow down very rapidly, right? And so we always say cut the sails. And what that means to us is think of it like you just cut the lines and the boom just slides out and the jib just completely slides out. I don't say ease. I don't want ease like a foot of jib. Like when I say cut, I need it completely flogging, and that's how you're going to slow down. But never do that inside about 30 seconds or 20 seconds because it's going to take them a lot, especially with my Genoa, to wind it up and get the boat moving again.
Understanding how quick your boat accelerates too is really, really important in this, 36 seconds take a little bit. G10s aren't that much quicker, than we're sailing small boats. We can accelerate, Vanguard takes 5 seconds, J70 takes 10 seconds. So it's a little bit different and you basically need to know that number. If I'm going half speed, let's say, pull up wind speeds, 6.5 knots and I'm going 2 or 3 knots at the line, playing games, trying to defend my hole. What's the time that I need to go from that to full speed? And that's also, now we're working backwards from that of, okay, I need to have the sails trimmed at 20 or 30 seconds. And I know I need to be 2 or 3 boat lengths away from the line at that point to have enough room to accelerate. What do we need to do to get into that position? And we also, and then make sure that we're calling that trigger pull or that acceleration at the right time.
The other area where let's say after you tack around and you're under final approach, and we talked about already that we have to defend for the people that are coming, let's say from behind you, that maybe the bigger head of steam so you don't get hooked. Where's the other thing that can go wrong? The other boat on port tack looking for that spot. And what you don't want to do is ideally have someone right to leeward of you when you're starting, because then you've got no place to go down and accelerate to. So what you might consider doing, and always keeping in mind to give them room and opportunity to keep clear, is to, when you're on, let's say on starboard, sort of on a close haul course, you see somebody starting to encroach on your hole from the opposite tack, you could aim more at them, force them to do their turn a little bit sooner. And then after they do, then you kind of carve up to maintain that gap to leeward. So
what
you've
Sean-
got a place
What
to
Sean's saying
accelerate.
is if you don't defend this situation, you're going to keep going and they're just gonna come underneath you and take your whole lane away from you, right? But whether or not, and this happens 36 seconds, we all just parade in here and tack when we think it's gonna be good at like a minute or so. And so if I'm tacking and I'm like, oh, they're gonna tack underneath me, I just slam the helm over during the tack and make sure that I come out of it pointing bow at them. Because when you're pointing bow at the port boat, they have to tack way sooner than they will. And as soon as they initiate their tack, unless they're, really good sailors like Eagle, they're just going to tack like normal, right? As soon as they start their tack, you could pretty much just come back up, get, hip off of them, keep your lane. But if you don't point at them, they can come all the way in and just take all of your lane away from you. So when you tack onto that final approach, if there's any boats coming at you on port, point at them.
I think it's like you want to deter, so you want to have the maximum like aggressive effect, but burn the least amount of distance to leeward, right? So you got like multiple boats on starboard tack. If I'm green, like this is pretty obvious, like, but the helmsman might be looking around. So the tactician needs to always be like telling the helmsman, like, hey, you got no threats behind you right now because this guy's already hooked. Your threat's to leeward, like threat to leeward. So this green boat, like one thing that I see people do is they like head down right at him, which is good, but accelerate, like, so you want to use as little of this distance as possible. So two mistakes is that people head down just a little bit, and then this guy's like, well, I still have room to go. Like the harder and more exaggerated you do it, the more awkward and surprised this guy's going to be, and the harder it's going to be for him to attack the leeward of you. And then be very aware of when he's committed. Once he's committed, like here, where he could no longer tack without following you, then it's immediately back up. And part of this maneuver is like getting good at turning the boat without necessarily accelerating. So like if we're all going pretty slow because we don't want to burn our lanes, like can you turn the boat like this without actually burning a lot of space? So like, maybe you don't use as much main, maybe you scull the tiller a little and pull the jib in to turn the boat without actually, as soon as the boat's down here, you don't like want to burn this.
Like I've done that where
I tack and I say, don't trim the sails after the tack, right? Like I'm going down, but I don't want to get that extra speed of beam reaching across the line, you know? So into the tack, I'll say cut, cut, and they just know nobody's trimming on the next board until, you know, I've dealt with that situation below.
Any questions on kind of that approach? 1:30, cool. So let's move on to kind of that last 10 to 30 seconds, our acceleration, getting to the line and getting over. What are you thinking about in those moments? What's important and how do you execute on that kind of final step of a good start?
That's kind of the hard part.
The rest of it was easy.
I think in some fleets, it's like the people who have good starts are moving quickly the whole time more. And in other fleets, it's just not possible to do that. It's the line is too short or the fleet is too good and too set up early. So like the J70 example, you know, there might be 50 boats on the line and there just isn't going to be a hole for you to come in late, most likely. So all the boats are pretty close together, and they're all trying to play this game. They're all on starboard tack now because we're talking about final approach. And they're all trying to play the game where they need to keep the boat moving so that they have steerage, but they don't want to burn their distance to the line too soon. If you burn the distance to the line too soon, then you have to do like a double take where you slow down and re-accelerate again, and that's very costly. That usually destroys your whole start. So you want often to keep the boat moving based on fast enough to keep your steerage so that you can quickly, you know, turn the bow on when you need to, but not so fast that you burn that distance. And then another thing is like, where are you to your neighbors? So you're also playing the game of not wanting to get too bow back compared to your neighbors. So kind of gauging in that pile that way. But, you know, if you're in a 10 boat, bigger boat fleet, that's probably not what's happening. People have more speed and it's more about like timing that right. Another thing I'd say is like, if you're sailing dinghies or really small boats, it's usually more critical to be bow out and to be exactly on the line. Like that extra half of length or third of length, even a couple feet of your bow being out is the most important thing in a laser or Vanguard because you can accelerate quickly. But in a heavier boat, it's probably more important to have a lot of speed, to have acceleration, even if that means you're slightly further back. In a perfect world, we'd always have max speed and on the line, but like, you know, that's hard. So like gauging your risk reward, like what's more important? Is it more important to have really good speed, even if you have to risk being slightly back? Or is it more important to be literally the bow out of your neighbors?
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to, you know, starting a relatively, you know, heavier boat. So, you know, having the momentum and the speed is important. I am always watching my lane, even all the way, you know, obviously after we do the turn to the final approach, but all the way to the starting line. And there are small adjustments that I'm making to keep that lane, you know, or that open the lure. So don't stop doing that just because you made your final approach. Keep doing that all the way through the start and obviously past the start as well too.
And just real quick, the technique for you know about going slow and maintaining steerage. How are you setting up the sails in the boat to maintain that, you know, that kind of half speed, still have flow but not going sideways? That I don't think a lot of people have really been taught how to do that.
So yeah, the communication with the jib trimmer is key. That jib trimmer has to really know what your goal is, not just like jib in, jib out isn't good enough. You need to say things more like max acceleration, bow down, you know, max slow, right? And that delay, especially if the person needs to get a winch handle out and load the winch, I mean, that delay will just absolutely kill you. So like that has to be set up ahead of time, the communication lane, you know, whatever system works for you and your jib trimmer. And then I think it's like small touches on that mainsail, like you might do just enough to know that you have steerage again and then ease it right back out. So that's something that the helmsman probably can feel better than anyone else. But knowing that you have flow and a little resistance on the rudder, that you can feel that means that you'll be able to turn down when you need to. If you lose that, all the other boats are going to turn down and accelerate, and you're like, okay, turn down and accelerate, and you're like, well, it's not moving because we're so dead in the water that I don't have steerage. You can also use the rudder as a brake. You can't hit the boats next to you, so the turns have to be really tight. Not big S turns, but like really quick S turns. You can also scull. You cannot scull to move forward, but you can scull to slow down, and you can scull to turn the bow.
If you're, so what do you say, if you're head to wind or you're above close hauled, you can scull the rudder, and get the boat back down to close hauled. But
Yeah,
only to maintain steerage.
and from a
smaller
rule,
boat.
yeah, more small boats, but, and the rules that you can scull up or you can scull down, you cannot do both. So if you scull up to get above close haul to maybe park or something, you cannot then scull back down, right? Because then you could just scull all the time. And so the rule said in one of the appeals says that if you scull up to, to steer, not to go forward, you can then not scull again to go the other direction.
I think on the size boats we're racing, it's more so we get a little chicken wing, get a little slow, can't get the bow to come down, give the tiller a couple pumps or the wheel a couple pumps over just to get the bow down so that the jib can catch it and bring the boat back down.
Yeah.
The rest of the way.
Right now, say, the 88 and the T10 are probably a little different than Sean and my boat, but no one taught my boat how to go slow and keep steerage. And it just doesn't happen. We just slide sideways. So, you have to know your boat and what it can do. But yeah, I wish somebody would teach my boat how to do that.
All the boats have very different characteristics when they sail slow. You're in a light little boat, so like Melda's 24 or something like that. You can stop that and get moving again. Where the 36.7, if you start going sideways in that, or lesser extent the T10, get the boat too slow, trim the sails, and all of a sudden you don't have enough flow over those keels to keep it moving. Especially some of the older keels need a little more speed to establish flow.
They're going to slide right into
Yeah.
second row.
Yeah, they just don't go anywhere. So, cool. All right. So kind of our final approach, and then what are we looking at? Basically right around zero. What are our goals and plans as we're coming off the line? What are we looking at as soon as the gun goes off?
So you hopefully have a little bit of a hole to lure to accelerate into. We talked about that a fair amount already, but don't think of it as just in the pre-start. That same principle applies after the start too, where, the more room you have to lure, the better, obviously. But if you're starting to go a little slower, you need to burn some of that room to accelerate. And I guess when you take that is partly based on how slow you are and also like what you want to do tactically. If it's really important that you be able to live in that lane for a while, like if your goal is really to be able to keep going straight on starboard because the tactician does not want to go right early, then you need to make sure that you're not getting too close to that lured boat. So it's like a fine dance there where, if you don't take any of the lured downs, you're probably going to be too slow. But if you take too much of it too soon, you're probably going to get too close to that lured boat and then get shot out the back. So take just enough, to get yourself up to speed, maybe use a little more of it. If you hit a particularly bad wave set or something, and try to use as little as possible. And then also like the boat to windward, I think that, if it's really important that you tack soon, you can intentionally pinch that guy up a little and you're basically going to force him to tack. But I do think that some people do that too much where they just do it reflexively. Like it's just, oh, there's a guy there, I can do this to him, I must do it. But in a bigger fleet, it's often you're destroying that boat, you're winning that battle, but you might be losing just a little bit on 20 other boats. So, you probably only really want to hurt that guy if it's a small fleet and it's your main competitor, or if you really want to tack.
Yeah, I usually don't have as many boats around just because of the handicap racing, but so it will definitely be more of a one-on-one in a fleet like, Burke or RC or something like that. But as the fleets grow, you don't want to waste your time, fending off or, you know, picking on a particular boat, because then everybody else in your group is just gaining on you and you're just giving that away. So it's a balancing act. The other thing, of course, after these starts, everything, you always get a perfect start, right? Well, yeah, that obviously doesn't always happen. So you always have to keep an eye on once you're out, you know, be thinking about, you know, okay, it didn't go as perfect. I'm a little too close to the guy that lured. What am I gonna do to get out of here? What's gonna be the simplest thing? And so always, you know, have your tactician, start looking over your shoulder, look out there to windward, figure out, all right, what's my escape route too? Sometimes, unfortunately, you know, things don't always go perfect, and you have to have that thought in mind.
I think there's a big mistake that a lot of people make. If you have that bad start, let's say you get, you know, shot out the back, you get pinched off and you start fading back into the second row, be really aggressive about tacking onto port and finding a lane out of there, even if you have to take a lot of transoms. Because basically if you sit in that gas, you're going to be behind all those boats anyways. You want to get onto port and you actually get a little lift off the back of the boats on starboard, the swirls coming off the back of the mains. If you're crossing a lot of boats or you're ducking a lot of boats on the other tack, will actually create an artificial lift as you come through. So if you have a bad start, you instantly, like I've had races where we've actually tacked before the start, or, you know, right at the gun, or even, you know, 5 seconds into it. Just we've identified really quickly that we're not in a good spot. Get out, get clear. You know, then once you get past all that big pack of starboard tackers, you can decide which way you want to go. But if you can get there very quickly instead of sitting in gas for a minute, 2 minutes, waiting for the perfect lane to get out of there, you're going to end up much better halfway through the speed.
So when things go bad, you know, you want to go left, and
When things go bad and you're going left, you want to go left, you decided that's the side of the course, and you get in a jam and you've got to tack. Don't be tempted to just slam the other side because you got stuck there. If you know the left side is the right way to go, get clear and get going back the right side of the course.
Yeah, so like do a full speed build though, right?
Yeah,
You want to
of
get up
course.
to speed. Like just don't tack back as soon as you've got a clear lane, right? It's always full speed build and then you can do something. Tacking down speed's horrible, we all know. But yeah, keep your plan.
Right.
Even
Don't
if
give
you
up.
have to tack, don't give up your plan. I at the start, you know, for me it's boat speed, right? I got a big fleet. We're all like, you know, bow on the line. And it's about, you know, getting your crew to all be on the plan that this is the most crucial time of the race. If we can get a half length faster in 10 boat lengths, it is going to be huge for us holding our lane. So everybody hiking hard, asses off the tow rail, right? You know, the trimmer needs to be trimmed and set, unless we had to do a maneuver right toward the start, right? Trimmed, set, up hiking, you know, ready to go, like the main all the way in. Don't forget all your upwind controls. Like people are like, oh shit, I don't know, the back stay on. Now we're just way overpowered. Like just make sure that at the gun or right before the gun, you've got everything like that working for you. It's nothing I hate worse than like, you know, everybody's sort of just lollygagging around and not knowing that this is the absolute most important time of the race, you know, and just like that, you know, the hard hiking. T10s are crucial on this, right? It's 2 minutes after the start, a minute after every tack, a minute after every rounding, you know, all of those things when the boat changes and trying to get back up to speed, the more we're hiking, the more we're doing everything we can to build that speed up faster is going to help. I don't know if you're going to mention this, but OCS, right? Like if you're OCS, well, two things from the rules standpoint. If you're out here OCS and, you know, this boat's here and this boat's here, you know, what do you do to get back? Well, you still have all your rights, okay? Everybody thinks when you're OCS, you lose your rights. You do not lose your rights just because you're OCS. You lose your rights when you turn back to the line to clear yourself. So I don't necessarily recommend this all the time, but if you're completely stuck in here, I mean, cut the sails, right? Just completely luff the sails and send it back. But if you have to, you can luff this guy to weather of you, to gap out so that then you can turn back down, right? You can do that. You still have rights. You lose your rights
when you turn past 90 degrees to the wind, that is when you're going back to restart. Right here, you still have full rights, whatever you had, you know, before you were called OCS. Okay, so that's first and foremost. But, you know, especially when I just got the boat 5, 6 years ago, you know, I'd come up here, I'd be early, and I'm like, I have no idea, you know, this is 20 seconds before the start. I'm like, I'm totally screwed, or 30 seconds before the start. I'm totally screwed. And I would just sit there and be like, all right, let me try to park the boat. Let me try to luff up. Let me try to slow as much as I can. And inevitably, either A, I'm OCS anyway, I wasn't able to park the boat, or B, I'm so slow that everybody's just blowing by me. If you're here at 30 seconds and you know you're ahead, you can sail across the line, tack around, jibe, and you can be second row instead of parked at the start and going nowhere. Bail out early. If you're down here and you're like, boy, I don't think I'll be able to make the pin. If you jibe around at 45 seconds, you're gonna have a great, decent start because you decided early that you were in trouble. So decide early and fix it. And yeah, you have all the rights in the world until you're returning to start.
We won a race at 420 North Americans. We were early at the pin and identified it at like 20 seconds. We were, you know, half a boat length from the pin, and there's no way. We sheeted in, jive. There's a big left shift, so now everyone's not making the pin, right? Crashing into each other, and you know, you get the one guy who tried to shoot it, then auto tacked and took out 20 boats. We jived through, came underneath that whole pack, and sailed upwind. We're just gone because everyone else was so chick. The people who actually started normally were so chicken winged and running into each other. So that's huge. And then on the OCS thing, I think my thing on the OCS. So as soon as I hear I'm OCS, my first, you know, I kind of plan A is always turn down, right? If I've got a clean lane just to turn, go for that right away. If that's not there, the second I identify that I don't have this path to turn down, I'm stopping the boat. Cut the sails, put the boat into the wind, stop it. Because every foot, every boat length that you're sailing away from the line is a 2 to 1, right? Now you've got to sail that. Now you're sailing the wrong you're sailing the wrong way. You got to sail that all of that back and downwind and going slow. So you see people just like they'll just keep sailing and sailing and sailing, and it's just don't instantly get out of there.
And I think it's important to communicate, right? Like a lot of times there's nobody below a 36.7. Like if the jib's trimmed in and jib trimmers never look at, you know, the boats around, so they're no help anyway. You know, yell at that boat, we're over, we're luffing, you know, because you have the right to luff, but they're not going to expect it. And all of a sudden you're going to close the gap really, really quickly. So let them know that, you know, stopping the boat, you know, just the main trimmer's got to cut the main, got to burn 30, 40, 50 feet out of the main sheet. You know, because that main cannot be doing a thing, whether you're going to be able to turn or not. You know, whether you have to stop the boat or you can immediately turn, you've got to cut the main. Leave the jib or just burp the jib so there's a little more slot, but leave it to pull the bow down. But the main has got to be cut. Like absolutely, the jib trimmer should be like, you owe me a pair of gloves for that, right? Or the main trimmer, right? Because he better have smoked all that sheet out of his hands.
We got about 10-15 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions, any scenarios they want to go over? Any thoughts? Good. We missed anything, guys? Anything else you guys want to go over?
No, I mean, any more rules questions if there's some lingering as well.
What about this?
Just delegating with your team. We talk about like the helmsman like needs to protect from boats coming from behind and from from port tackers stealing the lane. And then they're also trying to say like, are we early? Are we late? When do we need to accelerate? It's just a lot. So it doesn't need to be the tactician. If you can identify someone on your team who just is good with time and space, and can stare at that Vaqueros or that other system that you have and telling you like time and distance from the line. And this is where like doing practice approaches is really helpful. I found that I just like kind of had a ratio in my head, not as a driver, like as a tactician or a crew member, that like I want to be, you know, 1.5 meters away for every 1 second left or something like that. It depends on the conditions, but like delegate that to someone else and maybe not even the tactician. That way the tactician can focus the helmsman on other boat threats, and you just have someone whose job is to do that.
And like, if you've got time to kill as one of the instrument feedback you have, you know, as you say, practice that. If you practice, hey, we've got 10 seconds to kill. What do I have to do to the boat to burn 10 seconds? What do I have to do to the boat to burn 5 seconds? Because 10, you might have to, you know, cut the main and bring it straight back in, and that will get you that 10 seconds or 5 or whatever. But maybe if you've got 20 to kill, you definitely have to turn the boat either up to park up a bit, you know, so knowing what it takes to kill 5, 10, 20 seconds is huge.
It's questions online. One was just, where's the bow person at the start? Do you have somebody out there on the tippy point or not? Then
Yeah,
He's
so
up in front looking like a wacky waving flipple from
Right.
man, and we're all ignoring him.
right, you know, I mean, he's up on the bow, right? He's got his hands up, you know, two lengths, 1 length, less than a length, you're over, you know. As soon as you're over, you know, or as soon as you know that you're not gonna be over, get back and hike. You know, so bowmen, only be up there when it's necessary for you to be up there. Like, if you're like, dude, I told you to wind up 10 seconds ago, we're never gonna make this line, then why are you standing on the bow watching it all happen? Like, get back and into hike mode. So yes, we all want that information of how close we're out of the line. The closer we are to the line, the more we want that information. But as soon as it's clear that you don't need to be there, I've done it in 30 seconds. I'm like, you guys are late. I'm out of here.
so if you're running race sense, do you need a bowman?
It depends.
I don't run one for good race sense.
I want my bowman to come. If you're running race sense, I want my bowman, because it's a big boat, right? I can't necessarily know if I can swing my bow. As soon as we're done with the jockeying for position, I don't need him anymore, right? As soon as all he's doing is calling the start line, you know, I don't need him anymore.
Okay, and then I guess listening to the race committee, they just said race comms at start, so I have I guess they're talking about race committee.
Maybe I'll help a little on the rules on that. So the race committee is not required to call you OCS. The broadcast is a courtesy broadcast. If they don't call your number, tough, you should have known. If they mess up the flag, that's on them. And you can redress that, you know, if the flag went up late. And I mean, even 5 seconds. If they don't get that flag up, that second horn and the flag within 5 seconds, I'd say, then they messed it up, right? You need to know immediately if anyone in the fleet is over, and then you can decide if it was you, right? But you know, as far as communications go, they don't have to do that courtesy broadcast of boats that are OCS.
And just on that note, race committee doesn't have to say the boat number. If they end up knowing the boat name before they know the boat number, they can say the boat name.
Yeah, they can say anything they want, a bow number, sail number, boat name. Hey, the only blue boat, you know, don't have a colored boat, right?
My two favorite calls were everyone's over except for Wild Norwegian. And in a Vanguard, the race committee the girl couldn't get the sail number out of her mouth for some reason. She just yelled, "Andy, you're over."
We had a Sea Scout start, Blue Chip Regatta, and the race committee called the entire front row over. Like, and I know who you are. But yeah, and then when you come back, look for that flag. If you're the only one or the last one returning, that flag will come down when you are clear and not before you're clear. And hopefully, if they're doing it right, not noticeably after you're clear. Matter of fact, I've seen some PROs take the flag down knowing that your turn will make you clear. If you're dead downwind, when you're halfway across the line, they'll take the flag down because you're guaranteed to be over. So look at that flag to make sure, you know. However, if you're the first one to return, you don't get that indicator. If there's somebody else behind you still returning, you just have to eyeball it. So it's on you. Yeah, Darren.
I have a follow-up from one of Seth's comments, a little earlier. The the situation was you wanted to go left, but you've had to, because you got buried, you've had to bail out to port. And
Yeah,
don't
take transport.
tack until you're at hull speed. Until you.
Speed build, yeah.
Speed build. Is that all you're looking for, or are you worried about tacking while you're too close to the starting area because you're in bad air? And so you might be up to hull speed, but you're still not really in.
I don't there as much as I'm worried about a lane,
Yeah.
right? So I know it's going to be turbulent, when you've had to bail into the second row. So getting away from that turbulence, I don't think is nearly as important. Seth, you might have something else to add, but I think it's about, well, don't tack into somebody's hip. Make sure because again, you're going to be going slow. Even if you do a full speed build, you're still tacking, right? 3 lengths beyond the line of the next boat, you're going to try to take a lane from, or you know what I mean? Something like that. I mean, obviously, unless there's somebody else coming and, whatever else, but it's speed build and then tack when it's a good lane.
Exactly. And also take a look at what the wind is doing. If you find you're on a really good lift, you might want to just hang for a little while.
Yeah.
But you're looking for a safe place to get back and resume your plan.
Yep. Is there a question over here somewhere?
Yeah, I was just going back to that courtesy protest. Let's say there's 3 boats over early.
Yeah.
And the race committee says 2 of them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in the rules, the broadcast is a courtesy, you're supposed to know. But is it? I guess should the race committee, if they're going to make a broadcast, shouldn't they be saying all of them or just not make the broadcast at all? Or isn't that inherently confusing if they rattle off, let's say there were 5 boats over, they rattle off 4 of them, they don't say the 5th one, they have to know who the 5th one is.
I don't think it's a good practice, but them missing it could just been, oh, we missed one, and remember, there are like 3 people calling that line, right? There's one person in charge, but a lot of times you've got people right next to you and you're all on a pad of paper writing sale numbers down as they're lining up.
Okay.
And so what all those sale numbers are, and they're trying to collect all those numbers to make the calls. And so it could be like, and in order to be a judge, you have to do some race committee so you understand what they have to go through. And you're starting to write all those sale numbers, bound numbers, whatever down. And then you're starting to sort of, oh, that guy was over because he's 2 out from, and if they miss one, that's on you, not them, right? It is a courtesy broadcast. Is it bad if they say, 4 and not the 5th? Absolutely. I don't like it. I don't think it's fair, but it's in the rules that can happen. And then if they, if it were me, you could say we're still figuring out others, but so I don't think that's something I've ever heard from race committee, but I like more communication. I love the regattas where they're telling us what the signal is that's coming up. That was your 5 minute. The next flag in less than 1 minute will be the prep flag for the section 36.7s. I love that sort of radio communication from them. None of it's required.
The race sense has really good comms, by the way.
It is nice to know that you were over early at 1 second. You can dip, and we've dipped and got back and been racing within 5 seconds. So, and you don't have this problem where you're worried about the race committee or what they call, or the pin boat had to call the RC boat, and they call me up 30 seconds later because
And when there's 7 boats over early, it takes 30 seconds to get all those numbers out. You know what I mean? And so if you're the last number they call, you're like, boy, if I was the first one, I'd already be restarted by now.
Could you opine a little bit, because if you're over early, you really should go back. You shouldn't have to wait for the flag or,
It's really hard to know. Like a lot of times a boat will be a half length in front of me. Oh, they've got to be over early, and there's just line sag, and I'm screwed. So you often don't really realize it. Yes, if you absolutely know, do something about it ahead of time. That's what I was saying. Like you can bail out 45 seconds if you got yourself in a doozy of a position, and everybody's coming up behind you, and you've got no place to park it. Get out of there. But if you are OCS and you know it, the quicker you deal with it, the better it is. I can't tell you how many great boats in my fleet, in other fleets, have been OCS, and they take like a third or a second in a 15-boat fleet. And you're like, damn, So if you recover quickly and well, it really helps.
Any other questions?
I had a quick question about the race sense. So, the user interface said that, it pops up if you're OCS. How long is that notification up there and blocking the rest of the instruments?
Until you go back.
Okay.
They need to go, and then it'll flash clear for a couple seconds, and then it.
Yeah, because you don't need those instruments anymore, right? Whether you're properly close hauled or what your compass course is compared to your practice earlier, that's not as important.
In the box automatically, it will switch. It has a starting mode where it'll switch to a start mode where it shows you the line and the time, and then as soon as it hits 0 or you clear yourself, it automatically switches into a race mode, and you can change. All those screens are customizable, so you can have whatever you want pop up as soon as it clears up. Chris, question, man?
When does it say OCS when you get to the line?
0.
Or is it compute that says, okay, you're going this speed and you're pointing this way, and you will be OCS when the gun goes off, or?
It's not competing that. No, they're just giving you distance to the line, and it will. So if you go over early at any time before 0, it'll say you are negative meters or feet or whatever setting you've got it in from the line. It won't actually. You're not OCS, right? By definition, until the gun goes off. So you could be.
Unless there's another flag.
Unless there's an I flag or whatnot. Although they don't really use the I flags with racing. I've never seen it happen. I guess they could, but you technically don't really need a black flag or an I flag with race sense because you're not worried about 30 boats being over and trying to figure out who they are. So
that was the online question, is the I flag and the U flag, and then.
Yeah, they don't use them with race sense, but obviously we use them all the time without race sense,
Could
right?
you just give a brief refresher as to what's the difference between an I flag and a U flag?
Yeah, that's some good memory for me. Hold on, let me try to. So I flag is the first defense of the race committee when they had to do a general recall. So normally you get a general recall and they say we are now going to sail under the I flag, normally for the rest of the regatta, or at least the rest of the day. They're like, tough. And so with the I flag, it's the round the ends rule is the common nomenclature. But what it means is there is an extension of the line, okay? And you cannot cross the extension of the line inside of 1 minute without having to go around the ends. Now, it's the line and the extension, but it really means the line, because if you cross here, you're going to round the end anyway to go start. Same thing on the other side. If you cross it up here, you're going to round the end. You're already outside of it, right? So the rule says extensional line, but it doesn't really matter, okay? But it basically means when you're starting, if it's a long line, a big fleet, and you're under the I flag or some other flag other than the P flag, you don't want to start in the middle. Middle bad, because you've got to go all the way to the other side somewhere. Now, if you have a mid-boat line, you can round the mid-boat instead of going all the way to one side or the other. Okay, so that's a bit of a help. I know not many of us sail with a mid-boat, but and then you get on to, there's a U flag and then a Z flag, and they're basically the same thing, except the U flag, there's some sort of change in it where it's not excludable, or if they rerun the race, you're okay. But if you're under one of those two, U or Z, I think, it's a 20% penalty, and that is not the extensional line, that is getting inside the triangle of the course. Okay, so if you get inside the triangle of the course inside of 1 minute, normally that's by crossing the line up here. Okay, however, if you get pushed out at the race committee and they don't let you in because you'd be barging and you come up over here and then dip the line, you can do that normally, but you can't do that under an I, U, or Z. Okay, and so I think it's a Z flag, it can't be excluded if you resale the race, and a U flag you can, or something like that.
Z flag's 20%.
Yeah,
I can't remember
I
about the
think U
exclusion or
flag's
not.
the same.
U flag is
The DNS, and you can exclude it.
you can't exclude,
Yeah.
you can't,
And then
you can always exclude it. This is the difference between, they stopped using the black flag, because if you got black flag.
Well, they still use a back flag.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
Only in
so,
Wisconsin.
the black flag's even worse, right? So first you've got round the end, then you've got two flags that say 20%, and there's some difference between them. It doesn't really
no,
matter.
you use also a DNS.
I thought U flag was a,
It's a DSQ.
is
Yes.
it? Okay, so
Without
that,
hearing,
okay,
Yeah.
so that the U and the black flag are the ones that are slightly different. The
But-
black flag's a little harsher because if they rerun the race or something, you're still out.
yeah,
And the U
flag,
flag
you
isn't.
can
I've
restart.
seen black flags too, on bigger fleets before race sense. They're just
Oh,
like.
and
you're
the black flag, if you get disqualified, that score is not excluded.
Not excludable, right, which is ironic because here in Chicago, we never allow excludable races. And so it doesn't matter if you have a U or a black in Chicago.
Maybe they've changed it, so.
Yeah, this is the most recent rules.
Oh, okay. Oh, it used to be the black flag there's the U flag and the black flag. The U flag is if it was a general or the boat race got abandoned, you could come back in.
Right.
And the black flag,
Right.
you were over, it doesn't matter. I had a race once where they did 3/4 of the race and they lost a mark. Then I got black flagged and then they
Oh,
restarted again. And it was
What,
3
you
hours.
Still out?
Yeah. The black flag, the excludable thing used to be,
Sorry, let me read the last two sentences completely. Is if the race is restarted, this is under black flag. If the race is restarted or resailed, she shall not sail in it. If she does so, her disqualification shall not be excluded.
yeah, so what
And
that's saying
calculating her
is if you get booted, because of a black flag and you sail anyways, you won't be able to throw that race out. It's a kind of an edge case scenario. I don't,
Yeah.
They used to do like in the high level, like real high level racing that actually have the board at the weather mark, and if you didn't peel off them, they'd also give you a D&E or a non-throw out, but we don't see black flags much around here anymore.
Yeah, the good news is none of these flags get used that much anymore because the fleets that used to have them all the time, a lot of them have moved to race sense.
Yeah.
Not entirely, but that's like mostly what's replaced it.
The Beneteaus really get a lot of high flags still.
We're done?
Sure. Cool. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks for that. The bar is open until 12:30. And for those of you who have enjoyed this so much, you want to join the club,